Hello everybody and welcome to a Christmas episode of the Sixth Axis podcast that we're going to be wrapping up 2016, so this should come to you before Christmas. If it doesn't, you won't hear any of this stuff about Christmas anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I am, as per usual, your host, Kris Lipscomb. Joining me for this special episode, we have one of the news editors at the Sixth Axis, Tough Cub. Say hello, Tough Cub.
Sorry, I was mid-yawn. Hello.
Oh, good. We have Dom is, I believe, features editor. I always forget what your job title is.
Reviews editor.
Reviews editor. I get you and Jim mixed up constantly. It's Dom. That's Dom. Say hi, Dom.
Hi, Dom.
We have newish guy, but who has been on the podcast before, Dave Irwin. Say hello, Dave.
Hi.
And even newer guy and newbie to the podcast, we have Jake. Jake, how do you say your surname? Durasami?
Yeah, that's pretty much how you say it.
Yeah, Jake
Right
Durasami, who's one of our newer people, who has not done the podcast before, so he will be a new voice to all of you.
Hello, Jake.
Hi, Jake.
Hello, Jake.
Yeah. We're recording it slightly differently to how we do normally, so I hope it sounds okay. If it doesn't, it's all Teflon's fault, basically. Right. So this is going to be a wrap up of This is 2017 in my notes for some reason. It's going to wrap up of 2016. It was hard to wrap up 2017 just yet. Getting a bit ahead of myself. So we're going to just look first at a few highlights of the year, and then we'll go on to some games that people have picked out that they want to talk about from the year. Not necessarily the best games, but just some of the games they've enjoyed this year. So obviously for the best games, we have our ongoing Game of the Year series running right now over at TheSixthAxis.com, and you can check that out for all the controversy that was generated in a very, very long call on PlayStation group chat the other week. So we're going to kick things off by looking at the highlights of this year. The first thing I've got down here is that VR finally became a reality. I know a few of you guys have got PSVR, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
How do you find that in particular? Because that's kind of the most consumer-friendly one at the minute, right now, I would say.
It's pretty impressive, I think, for the technology and the stuff that you get out on it at the moment. The games that have come through launch have just been surprisingly good on the whole. Mm-hmm. Stuff like Tethered and Thumper and Res Infinite.
I keep hearing amazing things about Thumper.
Thumper is just it's mind-mashingly good. The thing is, like, because we've been doing all the Game of the Year stuff and I've been listening to the soundtracks again, on its own, the soundtrack is oppressive, but then the game as a whole really is quite claustrophobic. But like the visuals and the music, and when you're basically just within the game, is an amazing experience, and it's totally something new, something that console gamers haven't had. And,
yeah, for sure. And
the fact of the matter is that PSVR it's comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I found, because I think I've tried, at various points I've now tried all the major headsets, even if it's just for half an hour or something, and PSVR is the most, I wouldn't say it's the best headset out there, but in terms of comfort, it's miles ahead of everything else.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm sure if you've got a souped-up PC, or a Vive or an Oculus, you're going to be able to pump out far more impressive visuals than PSVR is going to. But I think what they've done with the technology that they've got is really incredible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tough Cub, what's your experience with it been?
Yeah, it's generally quite impressive. There are a couple of games where they've just been like done very quickly and ported over very quickly, which kind of detract from just how good the PlayStation VR is. Because when it is done properly, like Robinson or Here There Lie or something like that, it is very immersive, and there's stuff in there which you just can't do or experience in normal video games.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the games I've been heading towards, more the weirder stuff that just is completely impossible in a standard video game. But as I said, yeah, there's things like The Martian. Christ. Oh,
I saw the video on The Martian. That looked like a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, you always get duff games.
Particularly with new technology as well.
Yeah, to be honest, the majority of PlayStation VR games have been, good or even better than good. There's not that many duffers in them.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually surprising, like, how consistent the quality seems to have been from what I've heard you guys talking about, and people in general talking about. It's been amazing just how well Sony have managed to get quality games onto their platform, even from third parties.
Yeah, I think if you look at like the launch titles, there wasn't. I think we didn't get anything below 7 or so like that.
Yes, that's awesome.
As I said, there's some games which are just mind-blowingly good, and you couldn't do anywhere else, like the Batman VR or. Again, here they're like, I keep on going on about that, but
yeah,
I love it. I have a few reservations. I've got Rigs, for example, which Aaron swears by. He says it's like the best thing ever, and I just haven't got into that. It just feels a little weird. I haven't had any motion sickness, really, to be honest, though.
Okay. That's good, at least.
But I know lots of other people have, so it's a very...
I've had some terrible motion sickness. But mainly because I've been stupid and turned all the support stuff off because I thought that I could cope with it.
No, don't never do that.
I thought, like, Robinson's a very, very immersive world, and it looks incredible for what it is. But when I first started it up, the motion just didn't feel quite right. So I turned all of the support stuff off, and suddenly it did feel really good. Only for about 15 minutes though, because then I had to go lie down for about 3 hours afterwards.
Yeah, you really do need
limited.
Yeah, I think even with sort of Vive and stuff, you really need that kind of the stuff that reduces motion sickness on very much. Otherwise, you're just going to get fucked up, basically.
Yeah, yeah, really badly.
Weird. Yeah. I found weirdly the games which I think would make me motion sickness are the ones which haven't. It's like the roller coaster in the Until Dawn game. You'd think being on a roller coaster would be just vomit inducing, but I found it was fine. It's the games where you're just walking around.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember. No, there was one which made me really ill, and that was the one which is on the PlayStation VR Worlds. The spacey one. Can't remember what it's called.
The one with the metal spiders.
Yes, that one. That just made me bomb. I think that was because it was just like jumping. You were jumping from the wall to the ceiling to the. You were going upside down, and you were changing your angle every 5 seconds. It was going too quickly. But yeah, I mean, generally, I'm glad I bought it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, for me, having tried the Vive, that in terms of quality is just streets ahead, really. Like that compared to the other VR systems that are out right now, again, you can't beat PSVR as like a consumer level piece of hardware and at that price point and the quality it's providing. But if you've got the money to do it and you've got the space to utilize room scale VR, it's a whole different level of experience, in my opinion. Like when I've tried it, you kind of think that the cover all the videos you've seen of people like ducking out the way is just the normal like gimmicky actors in an advert thing. But it's so automatically intuitive when you're using the Vive because it just moves with you so precisely that you really will. I've only played 1 or 2 games with it, but one of the ones I did do was like a sort of castle defense thing, during the battlements at a castle and you're firing arrows, and you do find yourself sort of ducking behind the walls to get away from incoming shots and that's really surprising.
I think PSVR is capable of getting the same feeling out of it. I think sometimes when you first start one of these games up and the graphics aren't as good as maybe you're expecting them to be, Sometimes you think that it's not going to be as immersive, but a few minutes into it, and that stuff kind of drifts away, I think.
Oh, I definitely think that's true. Because you just adapt to it. But I think it's with the Vive, it's just the precision. I think it's the precision it tracks your movements with is what really sets it above, because it's got those two little boxes that kind of map the room and track where you are in position and stuff. That's what really kind of sells it to me. But Dave and Jake, as people who haven't got your hands on VR at home yet, what do you guys have you guys tried it? What do you think of it?
Yeah, so I've tried the PlayStation VR. From my experiences, the experiences I have tried have been quite immersive. I tried Rigs, and I tried I can't remember the name of it, but it's like really spacey, and you're in a spaceship.
Okay.
Valkyrie.
Oh, I can't even remember. But
Spaceship
either way,
game.
Yeah, just random spaceship game. But it was like, it literally felt like I was there. I've not tried the Vive personally, but I have heard good things, and I've heard that it's a much better experience. But again, I've yet to be able to make that comparison. But from what I've played from the PlayStation VR, it is quite a good little piece of kit, and it's really well priced as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. You can't argue with that.
It's like just going to open up a lot of sort of a window for a lot of people wanting to try the VR experience at sort of like a
absolutely
£500 cap.
In terms of my experience with the whole VR scene, I tried a very, very early version of the Oculus Rift years ago at, I think it was one of the EGX shows. And I think the game that I was playing at the time was Hawken. And the problem with sort of sat down experiences, from what I can gather, unless your brain is actually thinking, oh, I'm in the cockpit or something, and yes, I'm being hit by something, and there's a bit of force feedback, your brain gives you a bit of cognitive dissonance as soon as something like that happens. So as a result, it takes you a bit out of the experience, and that's what makes you feel a little ill. So when Tough Cup was mentioning that space game for PSVR, for example, that might have been because of the potential for cognitive dissonance in terms of what he was experiencing compared to what's actually going on outside of the VR device. Yeah. And for that reason, when I tried Vive, I played 3 games on the Vive, one of which was the same game that Kris was talking about in terms of the shooting little dudes from on top of a castle. But there's more than just that particular one. There's also one where you've got to throw a stick to a robot dog on a mountain, and it goes and fetches it for you, which is adorable, to say the least. So that's the Valve one that was co-developed for specifically the HTC Vive. There was another one which I played for all of about 20 seconds, which if you're standing up playing on the Vive and you're using what could be best described as the analog stick way of moving using the PSVR rather than teleporting, then what that actually did is as soon as I moved, my legs started to give way. So I was about to fall over because I was moving, but my legs weren't. And I wasn't in, say, a cockpit of a mech, so my brain wasn't able to make that connection. So as a result, I played that for 20 seconds and just turned it off and was like very nearly sick at that point. But when I'm actually walking around myself in VR for a lot of the VR experiences that I played, the one-to-one what do you call it? The one-to-one movement of brain to surrounding area to VR world, just makes it all the more immersive. Which is why, I mean, it's a very silly game, but Job Simulator in HTC Vive is probably the best way to experience it, because you can go over to a car and look under it and work out, you know, what's missing in the car, or if you're on the till of a till of a shop, you can look inside the cupboard by just walking over to the cupboard, crouching down, looking at everything that's in there, and it captures it so well. So yeah, out of all of them, I have the most faith in the HTC Vive, to be honest. It's got a massive price point and is not accessible to everyone at this point in time, but there'll come a point where it becomes a lot more affordable, as the technology becomes cheaper to reproduce. And as a result, I think it's got the most legs out of the three VR devices that are available on the market. Although, having said that, Gear VR is really good as well, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I would imagine that, and sort of the mobile system, the higher end mobile systems in general are meant to be pretty good, and I guess the portability element really interests me with those. Like
Cardboard wasn't very good though.
No, that's what I'm saying. But Cardboard's good for what cardboard is, you know. Like, given it is literally a piece of cardboard, it's a solid experience, I feel, and for what it's trying to do, because it's not really intended for playing games on.
No, definitely not.
Whereas Gear VR and what's the new one called, Daydream?
Yeah,
it's going to be good stuff. Quite interesting, even if Daydream kind of works with a super limited set at the minute. I think it's just, it's the Pixel phone's the new Google one. I think it works with that, and then they said it will work with other stuff, but who knows when.
Do you think you're going to pick one up?
Maybe get a PSVR if the price comes down a little bit.
Mm.
Like, for me, it's still a little bit too much at the minute.
Sure.
I'm basically one step away, really, from getting a Vive. And I have been for a while, thanks to my new gaming rig, which I got this year.
Yeah, you've got a new high-end PC, so it kind of makes sense for you.
Yeah.
Do you have the space?
That's the only thing. That's why I'm saying I'm one step away from doing it. It's space, which is admittedly a very big downside, but I reckon I could do it in theory. I just need to ensure that the space that I've got because I've recently moved house as well, so I might be able to set it up, say, in my lounge, for whatever reason, but I wouldn't be able to set it up in my office.
Yeah, I guess that is far. I mean, you've talked about this in the past, Tough Cub, as being sort of Vive's big, not necessarily failure, but the big thing holding it back. Like, room scale is its advantage, and also its most limiting factor, really. Let's move on, because we've been talking for a while about that. This was also the year that saw us get the sort of 0.5 generations, and the PS4 Pro is now out, and it's sort of that first step towards having a midway point in the console generations. And Microsoft have also talked briefly at E3 and haven't said much since about the Scorpio, which we all assume is going to get a better name at some point. But PS4 Pro is out right now, bringing with it 4K playback. Interestingly, they didn't keep HDR as a PS4 Pro only thing, and that's now available on all the PS4 PS4s out there right now. What I'm saying, SKUs. That's the one I want, not SDKs. Or the various SKUs that they've released over the years. They put it out on all of them, which is quite interesting, I feel. And it also improves the graphical fidelity on games. Has anyone got a Pro yet?
Yeah.
What's your feeling?
I mean, like, I think if you've got a 4K telly that does HDR,
sure,
then there's a huge leap there. But otherwise, perhaps it's a little early to tell. Like some of this older games that they've gone back into and tweaked for the PS4 Pro, some of them have been done well, like Tomb Raider. The jump, because I played it on Xbox One and then I played it on PS4 as well. And the jump between the Xbox One version and the PS4 Pro version is immense. And that running in 4K is great. But then it also, if you run it at, I think it's the 1080p, but then with the enhanced assets kind of thing, also looks phenomenal.
Does it run well as well?
If you run it in 4K, it definitely doesn't run as well. You can run it. There's also an unlocked frame rate mode as well, and that does actually run really well. But I mean, basically, it's giving you the choices that PC gamers have had for forever, which is you can run it at 4K, but that's probably going to impact on the performance, perhaps. I mean, like Final Fantasy 15, there's no discernible impact, I don't think, compared with the standard PS4 version. But it does look incredible running it in 4K, well, upscaled to 4K, in HDR. So I think it's a really nice piece of tech if you've got the display technology to make the most of it, probably. Yeah, I've got it. I convinced Shell that, we needed a new telly.
Just in time.
Well, probably about, 4 weeks after I got the Pro. So, it took 4 weeks to knock her down to the fact that really we did need a new one.
Did you actually need a new telly?
No.
Absolutely, Chris. Yeah. But yeah, I think if you've got the stuff to make the most of it, then it's great. And it's a really interesting step to see this 0.5, generational leap, I guess. It'll be interesting to see how long it now extends the PS4 and Xbox One generation, I suppose. Cause sooner or later, the original consoles are going to be pretty creaky. I mean, ultimately, the Xbox One, pretty creaky to start with, if you look at some of the third-party games.
Yeah.
Well, it is. But, I mean, Scorpio, again, is going to be, apparently, a huge leap above PS4 Pro in terms of power. So, that's going to make things, once again, very interesting.
Well, the thing is that now we've basically got a PC architecture and everything. I don't know if we're going to have PlayStation 5 or whatever it is, because they basically just said, well, you know, whatever your PlayStation is from now on, it's going to run everything.
I think there'll be a cut-off eventually.
There has to be.
Yeah, I think so, because you can't keep guaranteeing that minimum level forever. Like PC, you're right, because if you look PC games that still have that minimum spec and they cut off at a point, and I don't think they want to say it only works on the PS4 X and above. Like, I think at some point they'll go to PS5 and go, this is the new minimum spec.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen. But I do agree in general. I think it's just going to be more of a differentiation than it's
yeah.
I don't think it's going to feel like something super amazing brand new. It's just going to be a differentiation in terms of hardware spec rather than anything with crazy new features on it.
Yeah, it's just going to be a bit more powerful, basically.
Yeah.
More power in a box.
I mean, they're all just diverging now. I mean, we're never going to see, like, the emotion engine again or anything like that. because everybody's starting to draw on the same chipsets and the same memories and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because they're all AMDs now, aren't they?
Yeah. So all of this stuff is, well, it will start to come down to, well, what it's always been, which is exclusives and what your friends play, probably. But it's cool. And PS4 Pro is a nice step up. And I think for the money, compared with if you go out today and buy a PS4 Slim, I don't really see, well, unless you really sort of, that's the top end of what you can spend for the day. But for an extra, whatever it is now, £90, that there is a jump there.
Yeah.
It does seem like the consumer advice is the PS4 Mini PS4 Slim is probably not a great option if you're looking to buy a PS4 and you've already got one and you're just looking to upgrade it. But if you're really, really strapped for cash and you really cannot justify a PS4 Pro in terms of your budget, then maybe a PS4 Slim, but again, £90 difference, it's not massive.
Yeah. I mean, is anyone else particularly interested in it, though, as a new bit of hardware?
I've just got a new PC, so unfortunately, the only things I'm going to be playing... The only things I'm going to be playing on the PS4 now are the exclusives, and
sure.
There's no point.
Jake?
For me, it's more a case of getting a new 4K TV that I can then fully enjoy the 4K experience, which is going to happen soon. It's just my PlayStation 4 is literally on its last legs right now. I feel like the disk drive's going to go at any moment, in which case I'll just upgrade everything at once. But yeah, for the most part, I'm just being patient with it. But I have tried it, and from what I've played with like games like Last of Us and Final Fantasy mainly, the jump's enough to get me there. Like, I really want to just play as many games as possible in 4K now. I'm pretty just excited just to see what else they're going to bring. Like, Horizon Zero Dawn is just going to look absolutely crazy when that comes out, I think, with the 4K experience. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think the PS4K has a lot to offer for a lot of people. I mean, even the people that don't have 4K machines and they're just looking for upgrades, I mean, it'll run 1080p anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true.
It's pretty good.
The other bit of hardware that was announced this year was the new Nintendo Switch, which is the replacement for the Wii U. It's one of the most innovative consoles I think we've ever seen, where it's combining both portable and mobile elements. In particular, you can dock it at home and it'll go straight to your TV. Or
you just said portable and mobile.
I meant portable and home. Yeah. Portable and home elements. So you can dock it in your home and connect it straight to your TV, or you can lift it out and it will switch the battery and output on an onboard screen. And it's got these weird like joystick things that kind of snap into the side when you're out and about, or you can disconnect them and connect into kind of like a little central bit, and then they become almost a normal sort of console controller. Is anyone really excited for the Switch? It looks quite interesting.
I would say I'm quite excited for it. It's very different from what is being offered everywhere else, because it's obviously a Nintendo console, and they're always going to be, since the Wii, have been marketing themselves in a very different direction to everyone else. But this really does indicate a sort of last hurrah for the company, because the Wii U, I mean, let's face it, as much as I liked a fair few of the games that came out for that system, it did bomb quite heavily.
I mean, that's very true. It had real problems.
Absolutely. So this is really Nintendo's last hurrah. And I also think it's quite telling that they've gone for a console where they're emphasizing the fact that you can play it anywhere, whether you play it at home or play it on the go, in terms of what their strategy is for the handheld market as well, because they've obviously been the king of handheld consoles for, well, since the Game Boy days, really. I don't think anyone's really come all that close to pipping them in terms of number of units sold. And the 3DS has done phenomenally well, but it is showing its age somewhat, and as a result, probably now is the best time to retire that particular device in favour of something like the Switch. And we don't know a lot about it, which I find quite interesting, because normally when a company is on the verge of announcing something new, like when we found out about the PS4 Pro, for example, during its PS4K days, which incidentally is the better name. I think PS4 Pro was a bit of a cop-out. But we found out so much about, what could be in it and the things that could happen with PS4 Pro, the HDR support, for example. And for the Switch, all we know is that Zelda is coming out for it, and I've also found out that Dragon Quest XI is being ported over to it as well in Japan. So that's now coming out on Switch, 3DS, and PS4. But in terms of anything else for that particular device, all we've got is very, very tenuous rumors. So there's a Nintendo Direct on the 13th of January.
Yeah, I believe that's the date.
That particular day is going to be interesting. Not sure if I'm going to be staying up till 4 a.m. to watch a Nintendo Direct, but yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, and I hope the one thing I hope above all else is that they finally get a launch right, because they haven't got one right since the GameCube. Because as much as Wii Sports was a phenomenon for the Wii, the only other game that was worth looking at was Twilight Princess, which also came out on the GameCube. And it looks like we're having history repeat itself. Whereas the GameCube, you had Super Smash Bros. Melee and Luigi's Mansion, which admittedly wasn't really looked favourably because it wasn't the latest Mario game. But looking back on it, it's actually one of the better games for that console. And there were a load of others for the GameCube. It had a relatively strong launch, whereas, I don't know, no one's really managed to get a game console launch right since, I don't think.
Really?
I think the PS4 did well when it launched.
In terms of exclusives, though. There's
Yeah.
a lot of the things that came out on PS4 and Xbox One, and even as far back as the Xbox 360 and the PS3, were either ports or really, really underdeveloped exclusives that didn't really show off the power of the console.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So, really, in order to make the Switch an absolutely essential device to own, they need to nail this Nintendo Direct on January 13th in terms of what they announce, what's coming out at launch, and just make things clear.
I think it's going to be a massive shame if Zelda misses that launch as well. I think that could have been the thing to get people on board with it.
I think that's what they're saying, isn't it? Zelda's going to be like a couple of months later.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Yeah. Which is, and that's classic what they've been doing for the last few years, which is tripping over themselves even when they've potentially got something that they could easily win with.
I just think the problem they've had, particularly with the Wii U and Nintendo, is just it's. I mean, you're right in the games lineup, Dave, and I do agree that no one has had a really strong launch game lineup for a while now. But I just think the Wii U it's all in that marketing, isn't it? Like, it was such
absolutely.
a marketing misstep. The name and everything they did around it. I literally remember sitting with everyone from TSA at the E3, they announced it, and talking to people and going, "Is this a new console or not?" Because we couldn't tell, and that was a huge problem. And at least with the Switch, it's been made very clear. Like, it's a new name. It's made very clear it's a brand new thing. It's very different. They've done a lot in a very short period of time without even going to the full launch yet. They've managed to differentiate itself from everything out there. And yes, there are still questions to be answered, but they've covered...
Nowhere near as many.
Yeah, well, I think the main thing as well is they've covered enough ground that their intentions are clear, because the questions are things like, how powerful is it? And does that power change when you dock it? And like, well, how long's the battery life? Does it have a touch screen? Which are important questions. But the fact that those are the questions that people are asking after this initial release of information is a very good sign, because it shows people are interested and that people understand what the core idea here is. I think that's vital. Should we move on and talk about the other bit of hardware Nintendo released this year, which was the Nintendo Classic Mini, which is a NES box. Well, it looks like a NES. It's got 30 classic NES games in it. But we were saying before we started recording this, it's what, the size of a original NES cartridge or something ridiculous.
Yeah, as in like the diameters are, rather than the actual thickness. The thickness of it's much, much thicker. But in terms of, you know, the fact that it can fit in your hand, that's how small it is.
I mean, they could have made it even smaller, frankly, because there's virtually no real tech inside the box.
No,
absolutely.
It's probably just a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
more
exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, Raspberry Pis can be like literally not like the size of nothing.
Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me, because apparently it is running like a custom Linux distribution under the hood, so it might literally just be a Raspberry Pi or some adaptation of a Raspberry Pi, and just slap it in a nice case.
I wonder if anyone's dissected one to find out.
I believe so, because they were saying there are people who've hacked it and put custom games and stuff on it. So I mean
dissected it to know what parts they are.
But I assume they probably have, as part of that process, they've probably taken it apart.
Right, okay.
But it's something crazy, like the USB ports will I've got a data bus on them or something like that, so you can actually use them to program the console if you're clever. So that's quite neat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I can't remember where I heard that, but I'm sure that's what I'd heard from somewhere.
It's certainly powered through its USB slots, so
yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, the weird thing with this, I mean, we wouldn't mention things like this, but it was the demand for it was absolutely huge, much bigger than Nintendo expected, I think. And I mean, as Nintendo things often do, the supply the demand vastly outstripped supply, but it was absolutely ridiculous for something where you've seen unofficial versions of this sold on market stalls for 5-10 years. Like, it's crazy to have, just because it's the official Nintendo branded one, it going for it's going for sort of 2-3 times the price now on eBay, etc., which is insane.
I even considered buying one, and I don't like Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean that's all you really need to know. Like,
yeah, I've never really sat down and played Mario or anything like that properly. For what was it? It's like 50 quid, was it? 50, 60 quid? I think they were
£50.
Yeah, I mean it's just a no-brainer really. But it's a shame they didn't produce more of them, because they certainly could have sold. I think something like 250,000 they've already sold though. It's a ridiculous number.
Yeah,
I think this is just part of Nintendo's business model, but I just don't know whether it's a business model that truly works in that, okay, every single thing that you make, you sell. So they don't have loads of stock sat around on shelves and this, that and the other. But if you could have sold 500,000 of these things in the same space of time, then surely you should have, I mean, they must have known how popular it was going to be.
Exactly.
I think one thing that no one's considered is that they're still probably futile. It's probably futile that they're even thinking this, but they're probably thinking, oh, well, drive down the amount of any Nintendo Classic Minis out there. Why don't we just sell them the Wii U instead and get them to buy virtual console games?
True.
Yeah, I mean, virtual console games are a rip-off. They're about $5 each. For like an old classic NES game. It's just thinking about it is just ridiculous. What you're getting with the NES Mini essentially is just every game bundled into one for one small price, essentially.
That's very true.
Which is a much better way of enjoying the NES experience. Mainly because you know Nintendo bundled the best of everything, and they're not like just.
I beg to differ on that. Some of the games out there are set on the NES Classic are not great.
What games would they be?
I'm trying to get a list of the games that are on there, actually. I think Ice Climbers is on there. That's a terrible game.
Ice Climbers is great.
It's awful. It's like
got Bubble. What I was not saying.
Yeah, it's got Bubble, but it's got the NES port of it, which is not the best way to play that.
It's still Bubble.
It's still very playable. It's got Super Mario Brothers 3.
That's
got Castle. It's got Castlevania. It's got. It's got Balloon Fight. I do not like Balloon Fight. That's not very good. Balloon Fight. But it's got Kirby on it. It's got Dr. Mario. It's got Metroid. It's got Punch Out. It's got Donkey Kong. I mean, these are just classic games.
They are good games. You can't argue with that.
Well, here's the thing.
I played loads of Gradius on mine. It's still as good as it ever was. It's still rock hard, but it's.
The thing about a lot of the games that are on there, I mean, I'm just looking at a list now. So, for example, you've got The Legend of Zelda, right? We think of this as an absolute classic back in the dawn of NES gaming and one of the original games that sold the NES, except for Super Mario Brothers, right?
Yeah.
What people fail to realize sometimes is that you basically need a map in order to play that game. It's unless you know exactly where everything is, playing that game is frustrating trial and error, and we rightly take apart games in reviews that, are like that. But because of the fact that it's something from the 1980s, therefore it gets a free pass. No, I don't think it does. I think that if someone was to come into gaming in this day and age who did not grow up with The Legend of Zelda and played the first one, they'll think it's rubbish and go and do something else, which, I mean, admittedly is probably for the best playing, something else, but, that just makes our generation feel a bit dejected as a result, because we're like, I'm sharing my childhood here. I'm trying to make sure that my kid knows about, games back in my day, and they'll just be like, no, it was awful. And it's the same with Metroid. Whereas admittedly, you've got some absolute classics on there, like Mega Man 2. Absolutely brilliant, if brutal game, but it's simple to understand. You jump and shoot things. Super Mario Brothers 3, all-time classic, simple to understand. And And just looking at some of the others on there, Bubble Bobble. I mean, not best port, but a simple to understand, but thoroughly addictive game. I agree with Tough Cub on that particular one. But other ones like Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, the translation of that game is bad enough. And I'm even looking at some of the ones that were only available on the Japanese ones. Because there were some that were exclusive to the PAL region and North American versions. So, but the Bubble Bobble, for example, in Castlevania 2, are exclusive to the Western territories, where you've got NES Open Tournament Golf on the Famicom version.
Ooh.
Such a weird choice.
Very weird choice. And Final Fantasy 3 as well on there, but no Final Fantasy 2, despite the fact that they were both Japanese only.
Yeah.
I mean, Final Fantasy 2 is dreadful for all sorts of different reasons, and 3 is definitely the better game, but yeah, there's some very odd choices, I have to say.
I don't know, I think have you guys tried one?
Yeah, I've got one.
Do you find the lead a bit short on the controller?
Oh, it's crazy.
It's so ridiculously short.
It's like, to be honest though, it makes you feel like you are a child, because I had to go and sit about 2 feet away from my telly.
Cross legs and everything, yeah. No, I had to do the same.
Comparing the size of the cable of the NES Classics controller to an NES's pad, and it's something like a third of the length.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
How they expect people to play games that close to the TV at this day and age is like beyond me.
I mean, it's absolutely great if you put it into, if you use it in conjunction with a Wii U, for example, and stick the pad in the Wii U controller and then play games that way. Absolutely great controller. But
essentially an extension for it. It works perfectly for that in that instance. But for what it is, for the main purpose of using it for the NES experience, it's horrible.
Once again, it's Nintendo managing to mess up something that should have been an absolute home run.
Yeah.
It's so simple. It's such a simple thing. Just make the lead longer. It's literally the one thing they should have done.
Yeah.
But
they did a really good job with the UI, though, from what I gather.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing runs incredibly well. Everything looks fantastic on a HD screen. Far better than it should look, really.
Apparently better than the Wii U. Someone did a comparison of Super Mario Brothers and the visual quality compared to a Wii U version of it, and it absolutely was more superior.
See, I only have the tiniest catalogue on Wii U with Virtual Console.
Virtual Console games have a weird feel on all of them, though. That makes every game just look a little bit dated. Nothing ever looks as crisp or tight as it should. It feels like it is literally been taken from the 90s. But I think the NES does a good job of bringing back some of that 90s, the 90s games that we love, making them feel a little bit prettier, and for a good price. I mean, no one wants to be spending, like over 50 quid on Virtual Console games. So it's a pretty good steal, I think.
Let's move on, talk about the last thing before we get into games that we've liked this year. Just a small thing, but The Last Guardian actually arrived. It actually came out. They actually announced the date, and although they did not stick to that date, it still came out this year.
Has anybody played it?
That's one joke we can't get anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they didn't stick to the date was perfect, though. The fact that they were like, yeah, we're not actually going to release it then, that was absolutely it. That's just absolutely perfect. Like, for that game. Yeah, has anyone played it? Did anyone like it?
Nope, not played it.
No.
I have
Well,
too much of a catalog.
Everybody's like, oh, can't be bothered.
Yeah, I have too much of a catalogue at the moment to play Guardian, but it's definitely on the list of the last couple of games I want to play from this year. It does look, and from what I've heard, it just plays fantastic. So I'm definitely interested in the game.
It's on my Christmas list.
Yeah, Could say it's on all of our Christmas lists.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up. I didn't like Ico, and I got bored of Shadow of the Colossus, so I'm probably going to hate it anyway. But it's one of those games you just got to play here already, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's one of them games.
It's one of those games that you've got to pick up just so you can go, oh my god, it actually exists.
Yeah, I mean, I freaked out when I saw the box on someone's Instagram. I was like, oh my god, there's a box of The Last Guardian. I'm like, literally, was never expecting to see that out in the wild.
Yeah, it was in Tesco's the other day. That's
I might play it at some point, but the one thing that's putting me off at the moment is the fact that apparently Trico,
Yeah,
whatever it's called, apparently is really unresponsive at times. And that's annoying people. But
not ideal.
I'll probably pick it up at some point.
Right, well, let's move on then and talk about some of the games we've played this year. So these are not necessarily the best games we've played this year. It's just a few picks and things we wanted to chat about. Tough Cub, you've picked 3 games. Pick one.
Well, I don't know what everybody else has picked. That's why I gave you 3 options.
Well, Jake's the only person who's picked Titanfall 2. But you don't it's not just going to be you talking about Titanfall 2 and then we move on. It's a discussion. So would you like to talk about Here They Lie, Layers of Fear, or Titanfall 2?
You can talk about Titanfall.
Because Jake also wants to talk about Titanfall 2.
Well, Jake's going to talk about. I mean, the only reason why I picked Here They Lie, which I'll talk about that. So I waffled on about this when we were doing our big.
Yeah, I mean, you've already mentioned it, so you might as well sort of reinforce your point.
Yeah, as I said, it's the one game which I played in PlayStation VR which has done things that you cannot do in a normal game.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's not just there's something scary coming towards me, or wow, that looks fantastic, I can see a spaceship in the distance. It has genuinely done stuff which has just made me go, oh my fucking god, that is awesome. I have never seen that before.
So what's it doing?
I don't want to spoil too much of it, but
I mean, what sort of thing is it doing? Not specifically, don't give me the exact details, but
it just plays with what you think is going to happen. It does start from the trailers. It looks like it's a very horror game, and it's not really. There is scary sections where these. Does anybody ever see the TV show Hannibal?
I have.
Yeah, I think I've seen bits of it.
Okay. Do you remember, during that Hannibal has these not Hannibal the guy I can't remember his name, the investigative has these visions of Hannibal Lecter as this black covered sort of almost latex coloured man with antlers. Basically, that's what's in Here They Lie, except for they've got glowy eyes and they scream at you and chase you around the map. They're utterly terrifying. Which is fine. That's I was like, okay, well that's what I was expecting. But then it just goes and does weird stuff, not only with little tableaus which go along. Like, for example, there's a section where 2 of the characters, all the characters you meet in the game are unnamed and wearing masks, a bit like the characters from BioShock. And they don't speak; they just make a grunty sound, so you can tell if they're upset with or happy or whatever. And it appears the lady one is seducing the man character, and they're on a balcony. It's all romantic, and you're sort of watching from afar. You don't have to do this; you can just walk past it, but you just stay and watch. And she's cooing, laughing, and it's all quite, oh hello, something's going to happen. And then she brings out a baseball bat, and smacks him over the head, and chucks him off the cliff. It's like what? Why did that happen? But that's an example of how the little tableaus of the story goes on. But because it's in VR, it also does weird things with the geometry of the levels, where you're standing, what you're playing on or in. I'm being very vague here. Basically, if you're in okay, I'll make something up as an example. If you were in Call of Duty and you were running forward on the map, right? And then the floor vanished and everything expanded out massively, it wouldn't affect you at all. that you do that in VR, it is ridiculously mind-blowing.
For sure.
There's a section where you're on a boat, and then suddenly the river vanishes and it turns into a huge cathedral, and the actual metamorphosis of the level goes on for about 2 minutes, and it's almost like one of Michael Bay's Transformers. Things unfold and twist, and statues rise up, and it is just mind-blowingly brilliant. It's so clever, and I've never seen that in a game before. Well, I probably have actually, but as I said, it wouldn't have made any.
I was going to say,
impact.
because it sounds quite a lot like the Devil May Cry reboot in a way. Cause
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
similar things with geometry.
A bit like that, yes.
But I can definitely see what you mean about the VR just makes all the difference, because you're not watching it, you're inhabiting it instead.
Yeah, it's not happening just around on a screen. It's happening around you, and things are falling past you and up and around, and
I mean that's really interesting.
And there's another section on the tube train which is just stunning. And again, it's probably been done in the game before. In fact, I think it's probably been done in Devil May Cry, come to think of it. But because you're sat on a tube train and then suddenly look out the window and something happens, it's like I wasn't expecting that, and it's so hard to talk about this game without spoiling it. It is brilliant.
It's awesome though that we've got that this early in VR. You know.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is what I'm saying. This kind of thing, I think, has done really well. There have been horror games that did shit like that Weeping Doll thing, which I had to play, which was terrible. But
there's a lot of VR horror games and things like that on all of the platforms, and most of them are terrible, to say the least, from what I can gather. But no, this one sounds like it's trying something very Inception-esque.
It's very Inceptionist and very David Cronenberg. Just perhaps not just the morphing of the levels, but the weird stuff the characters are getting up to. It's very Bioshocky, very twisted, and again, because you're actually inhabiting that world rather than just viewing it on a screen, it's so much more shocking when a seemingly nice lady just smacks someone over the head and chucks them off a balcony.
Well, I mean that's great, and it's lovely to see or to hear about a game that's really pushing the limits of VR, as I say, this early into the medium, because that is really the kind of thing that you thought would take sort of 2 or 3 years for developers to get to grips with, but for someone to realize so early that you can like really make a player feel like they're inhabiting a world by messing with geometry and stuff like that is fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, and it's unlike quite a few many PlayStation VR games. It's a decent length. It's about 6 or 7 hours long, I think.
Okay.
Admittedly, you don't do much, and a lot of it is, again, it's more of an experience. But there is a story. You're interacting with the characters. There are things you can do, things you don't have to do. But it's got a bit of a telltale type thing where your actions eventually choose the outcome of the game, which is quite interesting.
That does sound interesting.
But yeah, it's I don't think I'd really add anything to it, to be honest. I just enjoyed the utter weirdness and the new experience of that VR medium. I think it's fantastic.
I mean, it is great to hear about games pushing limits like that again. Like, that's what I want to hear from VR. It's cool that we have got some games doing like standard things, adapting them and giving you that kind of things like Robinson and games like that, or even like the VR stuff in Drive Club. But for someone to really, rather than just going, well, here's what we're doing with games, let's just do it again from a first-person perspective, to really create something new, and to use it to use VR to control the experience in a way.
Yeah, I mean, the Star Wars VR is brilliant as well. I mean, that's fantastic, but it's doing
something people have done. Like,
it's doing something you'd expected.
Yeah. And it's doing a cool thing. That's not to say it's not doing something really cool.
It is one of the best things on PlayStation VR, but you don't expect to be inhabiting a David Cronenberg movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
With weird shit going on.
Yeah.
And that really sold me on PlayStation, and I hope they do it.
Well, Dave, you wanted to go in a slightly different direction and talk about sort of the least VR game possible in the form of Civilization 6.
Yeah. So
it's like the antithesis to VR. Really.
Yeah. Those who know me and those who have seen my work will know that I'm a bit of a Grinch when it comes to how I look at games. I will always see the bad in something, and as a result, up until this year, I have never given a game a perfect score. Civilization 6 is the game that made my heart grow 2 sizes that day. It was everything I wanted out of a sequel to Civilization. Because, backstory. When I was in college, I played Civilization 2, I want to say. So, the old 2D style Civilization games. And I played it for 3 days straight with only toilet breaks and food breaks. This was during the summer holidays. We had nothing to do, and me and my mate were just like, you know what? We're not doing anything. Let's just play this massive game of Civ 6 for 3 days straight. So not 6, Civ 2 for 3 days straight. So ever since then, I've been a fan of the series, but generally speaking, I've always found that the games have been really, really good, but only after all the expansions have been applied. So, Civilization 4, we had the expansions that came out for that. Upon launch, it was all right, but not a massive leap above the what had been done, other than the visuals. In terms of everything that was in Civilization 3's expansions was, I think, pretty much still there. It was a long time ago since I played Civ 3. And then Civ 5 came along and then said, you know what, everything's going to be hexagonal, and also we're going to remove half the content, which made it feel a bit weird compared to the fact that Civilization 4 and all the expansions was, at that point, the gold standard. But to their credit, Firaxis began reintroducing a lot of the mechanics that worked in prior Civ games in the expansions, and Brave New World then sort of became the gold standard, although I do know a few people that still preferred Civ 4 due to the fact that it wasn't hexagonal. Civilization 6 is the first Civilization game that I can properly say that properly legitimizes the fact that if you purchase it now, it's a decent investment. And it's all to do with the things that they've added to the formula, which are on the surface seem like really small things, but actually they are very, very important advancements to the genre. So beforehand in cities, you never really got a scope of how big each of the cities were, and the things that you were building, everything got denser, but it all occupied the same square, or in Civ 5's case, the same hexagon. Whereas now you have districts which essentially make your city sprawl out into the territory that it currently occupies. And as a result, you have to think a little more about where you're placing your city, not only to get the resources you need in order to build up your cities and your civilization, but also the fact that where are you going to place Oxford University, or where are you going to place your entertainment district? So there's a lot more strategy involved in terms of how you place things. And that just felt so fresh in comparison to everything else that's on the market, including Civ 5 Brave New World. And the other thing that was introduced that I feel deserves merit is the idea of, instead of having one giant tech tree that governs everything you invent and a rather clumsy government system, you instead have two tech trees. One of them is more about the inventions, and the other one is about your social policies or civics, which are then distributed to you in cards that you allocate. Because, I mean, cards are a simple thing to understand. You allocate it to a slot, and that governs how your civilization runs, which is a lot more elegant in how you build up your civilization, how you can customize it, and how you can ensure that you're selecting the right bonuses in order to achieve the victory that you're going for. So, and above all else, it's a very pretty game. I mean, it's not going to blow the water out of, say, like Uncharted 4 in terms of visual quality, but in terms of its artistic direction, there are little things that I really like when you haven't gone into a territory and you don't know what it looks like. The game has this sort of old-fashioned map style art on it, that the ones with like the whale with the spout over spouting water, and it just looks so nice, and it sounds good as well. You've got narration by Sean Bean. You've got some really nice orchestral scores of traditional music as well that ramps up as you go through the civilizations. And I mean, it is guilty of the same jankiness that has plagued the Civ games since their inception. Gandhi will still drop a nuclear bomb on you if
but that's now deliberate.
But
it's a
exactly,
choice now.
yeah.
It's a joke at this point.
I mean, there's a bit of weirdness in that. There was one point where America was trying to take over so everyone using religion, and I'd somehow managed to convert one of his cities to the religion that I was on, but I was being attacked by a load of apostles, and
as you do.
So I made my own apostle and then attacked the one that was closest to him. And all of a sudden, Teddy Roosevelt comes along with a furrowed brow and says, "Oi, stop that. I will not have you converting my cities." I'm just thinking to myself, I've already converted one and you didn't have a problem. Why do you suddenly now have a problem? So there's a tiny bit of jankiness there, but that's to be expected in Civ games when they get that big and sprawling, which that particular one was. I think it was like 6 civilizations. But in general, I've found no game that I've liked as much as Civilization 6 this year.
Well, it's just not a game it's not a game I saw anyone really picking out as their favourite. It's really interesting that you have.
It's mostly because of the fact that I've been a fan of the series for a long time, but I've also been very wary of the fact that it doesn't always get things right the first time round. And as a result, the fact that not only did it get it very right in terms of the direction that it went, but also genuinely was innovative in terms of the genre. I think that's why I liked it as much as I did. And I know that our audience is very PlayStation focused, and therefore probably won't be able to pick up Civ 6. But if you've got a PC that's capable of playing it, and the requirements aren't massive.
Yeah, of course.
But if you've got even a fleeting interest in a big scale strategy game, this is the best one of the year, hands down.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to see someone at the point where you're at sort of a 6, and still really putting the effort in, really trying to make it a good version of a long running series.
I think it's more the fact that they've put more of an effort in this one than they have in previous ones, or at least it showed more that they've put more of an effort. But yeah, just in general, it was my favourite game of the year, hands down, on any platform.
Jake, since Tough Club didn't talk about it, let's have a conversation about Titanfall 2. Again, I enjoyed as well.
Yeah, so Titanfall 2 is one of the games that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did.
Absolutely.
Not sure why.
I completely agree.
I'm like one of these, I hate to say it, but a lot of the time I'm the type of person that will look at something and instantly pass judgment, and I instantly regretted doing that after playing like about an hour of Titanfall 2, and I just got sucked right into everything. There's a number of things which I did like. I like the fact that it put a spin on that whole FPS, the FPS experience anyway. I like the whole time traveling thing. Spoilers, but there's one mission in particular where it involves a little bit of time travel. I love that. I was like blown away by that one little segment. And funny enough, I mentioned it to a friend and he played that mission today, and he absolutely loved it as well, and he couldn't explain why he loved that bit so much, but I think it just works so well, and it makes you feel like you've got a purpose, and it's all good having a big ass robot that does all the fighting for you, essentially, but it's good to be able to be in the action yourself a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I really like in the single player, is they do a good job of mixing you doing stuff with your Titan doing things.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of the time it's you guiding your Titan to be able to do certain objectives and not the other way around. Before, especially in the first Titanfall, it felt like you were sort of depending on your Titan to do a lot of the cool stuff in the game, and they've sort of worked around that a little bit, and they've sort of made it that basically your Titan follows you.
Yeah. And
you still have the experience of doing all the cool things, but that whether that's on foot or in your Titan, that's completely up to you. And I think they've opened the options for many players, because obviously at this point in time, especially, we've got players from different franchises hopping in just to try a bit of Titanfall 2.
Sure.
And I think it caters well to every sort of player there is.
Absolutely. I think it's doing enough to really appeal to a bunch of different people, and I find that a really interesting element of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was really hooked on Destiny, as a lot of you guys know. I'm a pretty big Destiny guy, but I came off Destiny and I was hooked on Titanfall 2, and I've not really gone back to Destiny much since. So Titanfall has had that effect on me, where it's pulled me away from a game that I've truly loved and shown me the light, as such. But I think the thing for me with Titanfall 2 is it has not that it has much staying power, but it has a lot of appeal to have a few more games in the franchise that could potentially be, welcomed if they're released at a better release date this time. I sort of feel like the release date of Titanfall 2 was a bit shoddy, with the whole coming out sort of roughly around the same time as COD and Battlefield. It's sort of doomed for failure, I think, with that launch window. But it's good to see that it's got a lot of discounts lately, and I have been seeing an increased number of people hop on Titanfall just to try it out, and a lot of people have been pleasantly surprised, as were we.
Yeah, I mean, I was genuinely surprised at the quality of it.
Everything looks so polished.
Yeah.
I actually tried Titanfall 2 on a 4K TV as well at my friend's house, and I was just blown away by that, because I thought it looked good on my setup at home. Not that I got a 4K setup, but I thought it looked pretty good. but I was completely blown away. Just in that first sort of jungly area where you get the robot.
Yeah.
Meet the robot. That whole area just looked amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that looked good, but for me, that was also the weakest section of the single player.
Yeah, it was.
Because I played that and I was like, oh, I'm not going to like this. It's like just really formulaic. And then as you get into it, they throw some real curveballs at you. And what really interests me about Titanfall 2, compared to almost any other compared to almost any other first-person shooter, is that it's constantly trying new stuff with you. Like, it's got so many new elements that it throws in completely unexpectedly throughout the game, time and time again. And it's constantly changing what it is. And that it's really interesting to see a game do it, because I don't think there's any other games, particularly first-person shooters, that evolve so rapidly from level to level.
No, I think the time it's taken to release a game like Titanfall 2, especially considering Titanfall 1 for me was a little bit bland. I think Titanfall 2 was the IP they sort of really wanted to do in the first coming, really. So it's good that they've got the opportunity to do that, but I want them to sort of do something, not necessarily multiplayer or single player focused, but just something with staying power. Because obviously Call of Duty has zombies. I'm not saying obviously every game needs to have a horde mode or anything, but it needs something else, because the game does feel a little small. Campaign's quite short and snappy.
Yeah, it's about 5-6 hours, the campaign.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be any longer, and I hate games that do drag out endings and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
It is a good length. But I just need a little bit more, in the game. It's my only criticism about Titanfall 2. Just needs a little something for staying power.
Oh yeah, I agree with that element. I mean, I've only played through the single player, I haven't tried the multiplayer yet. But, I do agree that it'd be nice if they threw enough mode in there, and I think they could do some DLC at some point. Hopefully that'll just broaden that out a little bit for people.
Well, the good thing is all the DLC is free for Titanfall.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I know you're a big fan as well, Tough Cub.
Yes, I'm playing it right at the moment.
But more of the thank you for paying attention to us here. But more of the multiplayer, right?
The entire podcast. Again, it's I used to play Destiny all the time, and I have since given up. Pretty much. I think purely because Destiny's done and dusted. I don't think there's nothing they can add anything particularly new to it, which will bring me back now. It's going to have to be Destiny 2. But yeah, Titanfall, it's my go-to game for turning brain off, shooting things, and not having to worry about too much. I'm just regen for the third time, which I've never done in a game ever. So that's a new experience for me. I didn't even know what regenning was. But yeah, it's just very slick. It's very well balanced. I love that the pilots are quite capable of taking down a Titan if they need to. Yeah, as I said, it's just really well done, very slick. The only slight problem I have is the lack of destructibility. Because I'm kind of used to playing Killzone and even Destiny for that matter. And literally nothing moves in Titanfall.
Yeah, I have noticed that as well.
They
need a little bit of environmental damage.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Yeah, you can shoot, coffee cups, or you can shoot the walls, and nothing happens. And a massive explosion on the wall, and it doesn't leave a dent.
Yeah, I feel like they need a bit more explosions. That would just make it a little tiny bit more epic.
And it's weird because a lot of other shooters are quite capable of doing that at 60 frames a second. So I'm not quite sure why Titanfall can't.
I don't think anyone's asking for like sort of fully destructible levels or anything like that.
No,
just little things.
Yeah,
a window smashing or cups flying off around, but there's literally nothing in the level apart from your Titan and your character, and that is.
And it'd be nice if there were like almost like little running segments where things blew up, and then you could like literally run through those explosions.
Yeah,
in some
so
way, you know, and
storyline.
just feel a little bit epic. But it does feel a little still, like the whole game does feel a tiny bit still.
Yeah, it's like here is the level. That's it. You are not moving anywhere apart from where we go.
I think for Respawn, it's finding that balance because it's like you can make the pilot obviously feel epic and have everything somewhat still in that sense, but it's also getting the balance of you can have like explosions going off for sequences where you are having to like wall run away from enemies or get to a ship or get to a certain point. You know what I mean? It's just the attention to detail, I suppose, in the sense that they need to focus on.
Yeah.
Because there are little points in the game where I think the attention to detail could be a little bit better, or like there were just big, vast, empty areas where, if anything, they should not even be included in the explorable area that you're been put in. There's one bit I don't know if you guys have got through it or whatever, but it's the bit where you're in, and this doesn't ruin anything. I'm going to be quite generic, but you're in like a simulated room. And you're on top of like, you're on top of like a building block essentially. And everything's like green around you and all these robots come in. And literally you only really need to stay where the robots are, and they've given you all this space that is basically useless. And it's just, no one that I know has used that whole capacity like to the full with no need to use it whatsoever. They've just literally stuck this big green park on top of a building and been like, well, you're going to have a fight that's just going to take up like an eighth of this park.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know the bit you mean. Yeah. You just stay in one place and shoot things.
And literally you just stay behind a pillar.
I run around it.
Yeah, but did you run around it because you wanted to?
I feel
there was like
that's
no
what I was supposed
purpose.
to do.
There was like no purpose to that section. I was like, okay, so I have to kill enemies, but why have they given me this, like, God forbid, like, hench map?
Maybe it's for harder difficulties, so unless you're saying that you played it on the hardest difficulty.
I played it on the second to hardest. So maybe on the hardest, yeah, I might need that space, but I mean, it did seem a bit too much. I mean, there were loads of points in the game where I felt, were unneeded or a bit unnecessary. Or that I thought were, housing collectibles in some way, and they weren't. They were just empty spaces. So yeah, it's just working that. I think it's just the attention to detail, making little things interesting. There's just a lot of little things they could have done just to make it a little bit more lively.
Yeah,
lively
would the word I'd be used. It just needs a little. It's a bit clinical.
Yeah, it's not saying that it's not action packed and it's not, absolute mayhem. It is really good. It is just a bit clinical, like you said. I feel like everything's just a bit too neat and tidy.
All right. Well, I like. It's just a game I like, though. Ultimately,
yeah.
it just surprised me.
The thing for me though, and it's quite funny that they announced the remaster, but it reminded me quite a lot of the ridiculousness in Bulletstorm.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that.
And I really enjoy Bulletstorm just for that whole, kick back and just have a laugh, just mess around with guns.
I also think for me, the big thing I liked is it's the first game that incorporates that I've played in a way that incorporates stealth with that kind of the parkour techniques that are in it, and that's really enjoyable to like hit the stealth button, wall run, and just like jump on top of someone and kick kick him in the head as you land on them. It's great. That's a really good feeling.
So satisfying. Yeah, I think Titanfall has loads of their moments where you do something, you're like, that is so satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Even like the little bits, like the other day I was just playing a quick multiplayer game with Titans, and I was just a pilot, and I happened to just drop off a building and just explode this guy's Titan. I catapulted off him, landed on another part of the rooftop, and then did the same to another Titan, and it was just so brutal. It just felt so epic. Could never do it again. Not saying I'm like pro or anything, but it's little things like that just make the game. Just
Yeah,
that
no,
much fun.
I completely agree.
It's just epic, I think.
It is. It's that real feeling of just having, of just fun, like pure fun, because it's so ludicrous. I agree with you in the Bulletstorm, because it is so over the top at times.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
One other thing I'm sorry. Go on.
Go on, Tough.
No, all I was going to say is the one thing I've noticed about Titanfall, which I only ever found on pretty much Killzone, is that people play the different classes. A lot of shooters, people just stick to, everybody sticks to one class. It's always the forward. I can't remember what it's called. Like your main shooty guy. No one plays the medic or the stealth guy or anything like that. And in Titanfall, you get a complete mix of the different styles, different weapons, and it makes it a lot more challenging and a lot more tactical as well. Which is what I really like.
Is it like in the single player where you can switch class literally as without even stopping? Like
you can switch every time you die. You can change class. So you only have to stay on the same class for seconds if you're shit.
Yeah.
Nothing too long.
And you do have to sometimes pick the right class for the job that needs doing. Like if you're playing the capture the flag, then it's better to go and use the stim where you can run really fast, which strangely a lot of people haven't worked out yet. Or if you're playing defensive, then you have to bring pick the turrets and that kind of thing. And, people do play it tactically, which is good when you're not playing with people, but you're just playing with randoms.
I think they do a good job with the weapon balancing as well. You can use like an auto rifle from halfway across the map if you really wanted to, and people that snipe all the time can use snipers if they really want to. It just has that good level of balance. Like I never once get killed and I'm salty about it in any way. I'm always like, well, fair enough, man. If I'm climbing up halfway up a building and then I get shot in the back, then it's fair play. I'm never once bitter. But there's a lot of other games that you could question that with. I think their online is totally on point at the moment. Their multiplayer experience is really good. But yeah, it just needs that staying power, like I mentioned.
Let's move on though, because we talked about that at length. It is a really good game though. Dom, you wanted to talk about Final Fantasy 15?
Yeah, which I love it. There's things wrong with it, but it's a really good game. It looks amazing.
Oh, good.
It sounds amazing. And it's just one of those games that I think you can find yourself wandering around in for hours and hours, just doing the little side quests and pootling about and looking at stuff. And I think the key thing though is that the way that it deals with a party is unlike any other RPG that I think I've ever played, in that it feels like a genuine group of people who are off doing something together. It's not like a mother duck and a load of ducklings following them around behind them, which most RPGs seem to think is what it looks like. This is 4 people who are talking to each other, who are sometimes getting on, sometimes not getting on. And it's not even necessarily that it's all mind-blowing stuff they're talking about. Some of it's quite mundane, but it all just ties into the fact that these are amongst the most well-rounded characters that I think I've sort of experienced recently, at least in terms of a fantasy RPG. But yeah, it's really well done. I think the fact that it's taken as long as it took and still come out the other side of it as a decent playable game is remarkable. There are bits that aren't as good.
Okay. Good that you're honest.
Which the fact that the producer has said that they're going to go back in and sort of fix some of these things is a bit annoying.
But they can't fix driving in that game.
But
I mean, I get what you're saying about the car sections, because for those who don't know, you basically the car acts like an auto travel in places. Like certainly in the beginning of the game, when it's daylight, you can't drive the car itself, but it's not really, when you are driving it, it's not one-to-one. It just feels like you're laned. So you're on a roller coaster and you can or a train track rather, and you can make the odd turn every now and then, but you can't say go off-road.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, the car thing, I mean, there's ultimately 4 different ways you can travel around in that game, and that you can wander around on foot, which no matter the distance, you can do it on foot, but it's going to take you forever, probably.
Yeah.
You can get in the car and you can either let it drive you, or you can take some level of control. I mean, generally, if I was taking a car journey, I would just let it drive itself and really watch the scenery go by and listen to whatever things the characters are nattering about, which sometimes is part of the story and sometimes not.
And that is definitely a big strength of those particular sections is, a lot of the control is taken away from you, but you are also able to listen to the characters talking about, either what they had for breakfast or the person that they've just spoken to and how much of a weirdo he is, for example. And that is absolutely great, but at the same time,
but it's all optional as well. All of you can fast travel for like virtually no currency whatsoever. So if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. Then your other option is that you can, after you've done a quest, you can hire chocobos and run around the game world riding on them, and they're dead fun. And
they're a lot better and a lot more fitting with the Final Fantasy conventions, because I mean we've seen chocobos for many, many games and they all act very, very similarly, but the car, I think it's because they made such a big deal about the fact that, it's these 4 boys, these 4 pretty boys on their stag do. And yeah, it's, I don't know. I just felt there was something a bit off about that, but no, I completely agree that, in terms of the character building and, also the combat as well, the combat is a bit finicky at first to play, but once you've worked out exactly how everything functions, it is a very, very solid combat system. And as you quite rightly say, no real RPG treats characters the way that Final Fantasy 15 treats its party of people in terms of how they progress and how they level up and stuff. So,
I think it's a really, really good game. I think the sad thing is that I think a lot of Final Fantasy fans are going to write it off because it's not turn-based. When it deserves to be considered as, getting into arguments about which ones are the best ones is going to take all night, really. But I mean, I personally, I love Final Fantasy X, and I think I've enjoyed this one as much as 10. And I mean, if you've gone back and played the remaster of 10, there are various things in that are really quite janky and a bit, and some very unenjoyable bits as well. And
be interesting to see how it compares to Final Fantasy 12. They're very, very similar in terms of how they run.
Yeah, and I loved 12 as well. So, but it's, funnily enough, it's one that I know I really enjoyed it, but it hasn't stayed with me in the same way. So, yeah, so 2017 we get to replay that. So.
And we also get the Final Fantasy VII remake at some point.
Yeah.
Which, from the sounds of things, is redoing the combat to a more Final Fantasy 15-esque combat system. Where it's on real time.
That's interesting.
Boo.
Yeah, but why do that? I don't get, because that's not what people who want to replay Final Fantasy VII with pretty graphics. That's not what they want out of it. They don't want to play Final Fantasy 15 but with the 7 storyline. They want to play Final Fantasy 7 but it looked like a modern game.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in two minds about it. I've always been a fan of the more turn-based Final Fantasy games. I still maintain that 6 is the best, and 7 is very, very, very good and deserve to be remade. But I don't know. There's a lot of merit of doing something exactly how it was done back in the day, but at the same time, there's also merit for modernizing things. So I think as long as they find that balance, and maybe you could have 2 different modes or something. I'm not quite sure how one would do it, but
I mean, Final Fantasy 15 has a wait mode, which it's not a turn-based mode, and it 100%. It's kind of a halfway house between the two, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I use it just to give me a bit of breathing space, but it doesn't feel like a turn-based RPG in the slightest. No,
not at all. So, yeah, it'll be interesting anyway. I think they should just leave it well alone. I think it's that question. I mean, is it a remaster or a remake? But ultimately, the people that want to replay that game don't want to replay it with an entirely different combat system. I think people will hate it.
I have nothing to say about Final Fantasy because they have not really interested me much. Like, I'm glad you liked it. The stuff in the cars looked cool.
Thanks, mate.
Like the stuff where they were just like chilling out in the cars that I saw in the trailer looked pretty cool. It didn't look very Final Fantasy though. It just looked like some guys chilling out.
It's definitely Final Fantasy.
Like I get that Final Fantasy is always mixed kind of futurism with fantasy stuff, but this just seems this seems like it's way more on the realistic spectrum from the trailers and stuff. But maybe it's super nuts when you're actually playing it.
Yeah,
it's definitely the most like 7, I would say.
Yeah.
In terms of its setting, it's definitely the most modern.
Yes.
Well, yeah, because they got like mobile phones and stuff.
Yeah.
But then 13 has loads of this stuff, and 10, I guess the world that Tidus comes from is sort of actually probably closer to that as well. So, or the era rather.
I don't know. It just seemed like it was some nice guys chilling out having a road trip, and I was kind of into that element.
Yeah, but that's probably only really the beginning bit.
Oh well, then no, I have no interest. If the whole game was just them like chilling out having a nice road trip, I'd be like, yeah, I'm on board. But no, they have to like fight monsters and shit. Nah.
I think you kind of convinced me to grab it when it comes on, because I think it's going to be one of the 12 deals of Christmas.
Yeah, definitely go for it.
So I think it's going to be like 30 quid or something. So
I'd imagine so. Yeah.
How long did it take you guys to finish it, by the way? Just out of interest.
I've still not finished it.
Okay.
I think it was just under 40 hours.
It's a long. They're all long games, Final Fantasy.
Yeah. And to be honest, then that was rushing it for review. Yeah. So I would have, if I was playing it naturally, I would have done a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
Ambling about and side quests and stuff.
Yeah.
Than what I ultimately had to do. But yeah, I think if you amble about and you do loads of side quests, it's probably more like a 70, 80 hour game at least, really.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. One of my friends did it recently, and he did all the side missions and progressed through the story, and it took him about 70, in between 70 and 71 hour. 71 hours. So,
a bit of a long slog.
Yeah, quite a long one. But he
take a break then.
He just, cause he's unemployed, he just sessioned it days on end, man. I literally would come on every day just for literally just to check the store for deals. And I would just see him playing Final Fantasy, and I'm like, dude, and he's like, you're nearly there. He's platinumed it now as well, so literally destroyed the game in a week in 72 hours. In 72 hours, you can definitely platinum Final Fantasy.
All right, so let's. I'm nervous to this. Let's talk about Uncharted 4. So.
Here we go.
I was saving this for last.
Oh, hot topic.
So I understand some of you guys might like Uncharted 4 a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, just a bit.
It's alright.
This is perhaps not my stance on Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4... Look, so here's the thing with Uncharted 4, that's why I want to talk about it. It is, for me, I actually put this forward as one of the categories we've got Game of the Year. I don't think it's not come out the most disappointing one yet. That's not been gone live yet, has it?
No, not gone live.
Most disappointing is one of the categories that's coming out. And I nominated Uncharted 4 in that category. I was shot down early and heavily. But for me, like, Uncharted 4 looks gorgeous. We all knew it was going to look gorgeous, and I don't think anyone can dispute that. Like, it looks absolutely brilliant throughout. It is a very pretty game. It's going for that realistic style, but it does it very well. And there's some beautiful shots, particularly in the jungle, and the way the foliage moves in the jungle is lovely. Towards the end of the game. That might be it for, like, good stuff, really. Like, the gameplay is fine. The gameplay, I will say, actually, some of the Jeep sections are good. Some of the Jeep sections are massive filler that don't really serve any purpose in moving the game or narrative forwards in any meaningful way, but they do also feature some nice side narrative, which is interesting. That's probably, actually, for me, is Uncharted 4's strongest point narratively, is when it's doing those little side bits that when you're in the Jeep. I actually think that's some of its strongest stuff. The core narrative, which is something I really appreciated in Uncharted and Uncharted 2, and Uncharted 3 to an extent, this is weak. For me, I wasn't really drawn in by the narrative, not in any significant way, and the second half of the game is beating you over the head with the game's themes. It's just like lazy writing the way it's handling its themes, because they get progressively more and more and more obvious as the game moves forwards. And I don't. For me, it's really interesting actually that at the beginning, I really felt the bond between Sam and Nate, and as the game progresses, I fell off that more and more, because like it just didn't feel good, because the game is like, this game is about family. I was like, oh cool, that's nice. And the early stuff, I know that you really enjoy the Crash Bandicoot scene, Tough Cub, and you can really relate to that. And I can certainly understand how people relate to that, because it is a nice, touching scene. And
we should talk about, you mean the people on the sofa, not just Crash Bandicoot.
Not Crash Bandicoot, but the where you're playing Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
That's nice. And then they revisit that in the epilogue, and I was just like, oh fuck you, Naughty Dog. This game doesn't need this epilogue. That bugged me for a start. It's like the epilogue in Harry Potter. No one needs the epilogue in Harry Potter.
Yeah, I think it's just their way of letting you know that Nathan like achieved his dream, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, but you don't just.
Are we giving the ending away here?
Like,
No,
I don't want to talk about what explicitly happens in the ending. I don't want to talk about explicitly what happens in the epilogue. But that epilogue is, we'll say it's set like 15, 20 years after the game's ending. 15 years, I guess. Something like that. And that was unnecessary, in my opinion. And it really cements, like, what the game... It cements what the game's themes are, but not in a positive way. Because I feel good writing should not be entirely about hammering home those themes. Themes should be expressed as part of the writing. They shouldn't end up being this kind of just core that's constantly there. And I did feel that there are some interesting elements. Particularly where the stuff with Nate and Eleanor later in the game is interesting. It's a little bit Deus Ex Machina, the bit where she turns up later in the game. I was a bit like, really? She just found him? Okay. But
Sorry,
sure.
Kris, Deus Ex Machina, not
Yeah,
Machina.
yeah. But
Sorry.
it's still, but that really bugged me. That particular element was just a little bit like, oh, I guess she's here. Cool.
Yeah.
And the gameplay as well, like we talked about the Jeep stuff, and that's fine, but the gameplay felt stale to me. Like, the shooting is stale, and it's always been bad in Uncharted. It's not a game with good shooting. But also a lot of the puzzle stuff just felt weak and needlessly padded out. There are cool scenes. The tower puzzle is an excellent puzzle, but it's the only one that really stood out to me as excellent. Whereas the one which I think is actually under the tower, where you've got the portraits in the rooms, I thought was a bad puzzle. Just bad and lazy.
That was just a way of telling more of the story, though.
Yeah, I guess.
It was kind of a puzzle. It was a story wrapped up in a rather rubbish puzzle. I agree, that one was pretty.
It was a shitty puzzle. I'll give you that. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, and in general, particularly towards the end of the game, there's segments at the end of the game where it's literally just a corridor shooter for like 20 minutes. It's literally a corridor shooter, and that's not why I'm playing Uncharted.
I know what bit you're on about. The bit with dynamite.
Yeah, that's just it's dull. It's genuinely like a game from 10 years ago. I
actually hated that whole segment because I was like, "What is this? Why am I spontaneously being blown up?" Like, and it was literally nothing to do with difficulty whatsoever. It was just so annoying to get through. It was just so.
That bit.
Yeah.
Just realised what you're on about.
Dynamite corridors. That's all you need to mention, and you're Uncharted 4.
Oh,
just
God.
instant.
And then the final boss fight kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's just
isn't the boss fight.
It's just bad. Like, it's not a good finale to the game.
Yeah, it does kind of just end, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It drops off, and also what's his name? I've forgotten his name. The bad guy's the main villain's name.
Susan.
Nadine?
No, the other one. The guy.
It's something South Africa.
Rafe. It's Rafe.
Rafe.
Yeah.
Rafe.
Like, he... For much of that game, actually, I found him... He's not interesting, but he was a solid villain. Like, his motivations were clear, but you still felt that he was just like, I want the fortune. And then you get right to the end of the game, and he's like, no, I'm just a comic book villain at the end of this. I'm just a lazy cartoon villain. And I was like, oh, well, fucking great. Like, why? Whereas Nadine is an interesting character. Nadine is brilliant. Like, I actually really like Nadine.
We all agreed that we like Nadine.
Yeah.
Like, when Nadine is a solid character.
Yeah, Nadine is really interesting. And I feel is one of the few characters I've seen in perhaps any media who is just genuinely, she's motivated by greed, but in a sensible way. Because she wants stuff, but she's not going to risk her life for that, because what's the point? Like, there's no point being greedy if you can't spend the money. And I actually really like that element of her character, that she's like, no, you can fuck off then. Like, I'm not going to get us killed to do this. That's super dumb. And I really like, that element of her. And also, at the end of the game, how her approach, to kind of the game's finale completely juxtaposes with Sam's approach to that finale. That's actually a very nice point, and it serves as like a really nice counterpoint between two new characters for this game. And because if you consider that Rafe is, I would say to an extent that Rafe is actually Sam's equivalent, and Nadine is more Drake's Nathan's equivalent.
No, that's a good.
But at the end, it's interesting how Nadine's approach there completely is the complete opposite of Sam's approach, given that they're on the opposite sides, and that's really nice and works really well. But yeah, I just felt like it underwhelmed me. It just underwhelmed me throughout. And I know I'm probably gonna get flack from this when people listen to the podcast. I've talked about it on Twitter, and I've definitely caught flack there. And I talked about it in the big Slack group that we're all in. Had a very lengthy argument about it.
Yet you still don't realise you're wrong.
It's not.
I kind of agree, Chris.
Thank you.
I do kind of agree. I kind of agree, but I do think the good points outweigh the bad.
That's for me. For me, the tipping point isn't in the right place. Like, it definitely has good points, and I would like to make it clear it has good points, but by the standards I expect from an Uncharted game, it falls well short of those standards.
All I'm gonna say is, I think Uncharted 2 set the bar so high for me.
Uncharted 2 is superb. Uncharted 2 is excellent.
And Uncharted 4 fell a little short of that, and I'll give you that. But I still think Uncharted 4 is a very good entry in the franchise. Definitely better than 3.
I think as well, what really bugs me with Uncharted 4 is they do the in media res thing that they did from Uncharted 2, and they come back to it, and it's so much weaker here than it is in Uncharted 2. Uncharted 2 actually feels meaningful. Here it's just there, and the scene that they're jumping you into in the middle of the story isn't even like a high point of the story.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Whereas in Uncharted 2, they pick a really pivotal moment in the story, and in Uncharted 4, they just pick like a sort of forgettable scene. Like, it's a bad choice. They've just gone for it because I feel that they've gone for it because it's the closest bit of it to that Uncharted 2 scene. In terms, again, without trying to spoil it entirely, but in terms of consequences of what happens at the end of that scene and what happens at the end of that scene in Uncharted 2. It's the closest, but it's nowhere near as memorable as what happens in Uncharted 2.
That's sort of what Naughty Dog wanted to do, though. I feel like that's they sort of wanted to do like a best hits of Uncharted rolled into it.
I think that's true. And I will say but that epilogue in particular just genuinely pissed me off. Like, it was just bad. It's bad and unnecessary, and I'm glad you agree with me, Dom. Though it's nice to have people have my back.
To be fair, my position is that I haven't finished it.
Okay.
And part of that comes down to the fact that Uncharted 2 was amazing and built on everything that number 1 had put in place. I really chewed my way through Uncharted 3. It just felt hard work. The whole thing felt hard work. And sadly, I think I've carried some of that through into Uncharted 4. And stuff like the gunplay and things, still don't work very well. And Uncharted 3 really showed that up for me. And Uncharted 4 just seems to have carried that on.
Uncharted 4, just goes, we don't care that it's bad, basically. Oh man. Yeah, no, you're totally right on the gunplay.
But it looks amazing. And it is something that I'm going to probably finish off now in the next couple of weeks now that things have quietened down. So yeah, I'll have my final thoughts.
I'll be interested to hear them. But yeah, you're definitely right. It's given that they've evolved a lot of elements of the series, they haven't evolved the gunplay at all, like even slightly.
No, I agree. The gunplay, I was quite surprised when I played it, and I sort of felt, especially after playing the Uncharted collection or Nathan Drake collection, I sort of felt like the gunplay would be changed a little bit, but it literally felt exactly the same as it did in the collection. And I was quite disappointed because it sort of felt like, even like things like, you know, like the grapple hook that you have to like climb walls and things, I sort of felt like you should be able to use that in the actual combat in the story and stuff, like just be able to throw that at someone or...
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because you can do that in the multiplayer, but you can't do it in the single player, which is so weird. Like, it's so... You can lasso the grapple hook and hit anyone with it in the multiplayer, but you can't do that in the single player, which is just so pointless. But it's like little things like that. They just
particularly in the stealth sections as well. It'd be lovely to be able to grapple someone.
Exactly. Or like just literally be hanging off like at the bottom of a rock and just throw the hook and just pull someone down. Like, it's so nice. Yeah. But it's little things like that, that they could have like brushed up on. But, I don't know, I think for me, because it's quite, I think Uncharted 4 is put in a weird place for me, because I played Uncharted 2, which I really loved, and I played Uncharted 3, which I really hated. So I hate deserts. Any game with a desert, I immediately hate.
Okay.
Like,
alright.
I'm biased against games with deserts. Journey is completely out the window. Like,
well, that's good. I think it's a shit.
Yeah, I've heard good things, but I've played like 20 minutes and I just can't get into it. But it's sort of the same thing. Like, I sort of felt like there were parts in Uncharted 4 that had like, let's say Madagascar. I was on a Jeep for ages and I was just literally driving for way too long. Like, it got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm tired of like awkwardly driving up this mountain now. Like, there was just loads of points like that. I don't know if you remember the bit where you first get into Madagascar and it's like canyons everywhere, and you're with I think Sam and Sully, and they're in your Jeep.
Yeah.
You have to follow the little stacks of rocks to get to your next destination, which is a horrible thing to give you a sense of direction, by the way. Because depending on where you're looking at the rocks, that is completely different. Like,
yeah, it's not good. Like,
is that what you had to do? I didn't know that.
To be fair, you can kind of stumble through that section, I think, but the rocks are there to help you.
Yeah, the stacks of rocks that you see along the way are just guidelines for where you need to go.
It's interesting in that they've created like a For's open world with it. Really, they make it look like it's an open world, but there's only one path through. I thought it was
a smart thing initially, but then it got to the length of.
It just keeps.
There's
going.
A limit. Yeah, there's a limit to how much space you should really need for segments like that, and they needed far less.
Too many of like the bases in between.
Yeah, because it felt like I was driving 20 minutes to get to one base, and then 20 minutes to get to another. Like,
I just feel there's too. If there were less of those, but I didn't. There's like 3 or 4, and it didn't need to be that many. Like, I would have taken 2 happily.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, Uncharted felt like a nice send-off. Maybe not the most epic of send-offs, but felt like a nice send-off. I felt like satisfied by the end of it anyway. So,
well, I think you're rubbish because I loved it.
Right, anyway,
I'm not saying I didn't love it. I loved it.
Not anyway. You've slagged it off. Someone needs to stand up. But I thought it was fantastic. Every single bit of it I enjoyed, but perhaps because you all seem to be treating it as a game, which fair enough it is. But I was just quite happy to sit along and play a bit of stuff and then get more story.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie, it felt really cinematic, and I do love that aspect. Like, Uncharted's always been one of them games where I can just sit back and enjoy just watching the cutscenes. Yeah. And just playing the game and listen to the dialogue. For me, it did a fantastic job of storytelling. But it's just, there were just parts that were just a little dragged out. And maybe I'm just scarred from my Uncharted 3 experience.
So I didn't find 3 a problem either, so that's...
Yeah, see, that's where it differs for us there. But I genuinely just didn't like 3 just because of the setting, and just to loosely touch on it, I hated the stereotypical villain. Like, it just felt like, stereotypical British person being the bad guy, or woman.
Oh, it was, Helen Mirren, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
But not.
It just felt a little cheap. I don't know. But then Uncharted 4 came and it did a much better job at storytelling and had a lot more likable characters. I think it failed in, just the amount of filler. I think in between segments where they just wanted to just storytell a little bit and just have a little bit of narrative. I think they could have condensed, some Jeep sections a little bit smaller. But I sort of feel like they should have added more climbing sections as well. Maybe have dialogue during them segments. Because it felt like you weren't climbing as much in this game. There wasn't anything...
There are some bits. There are some bits where you have some nice dialogue with Sam. Particularly in Scotland is good.
My comparison to anyone that's played Uncharted games is, do you remember when you scaled that big building on Uncharted 2 where you get to the top and there's a pool and you do the whole Marco Polo thing?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, that whole area, the whole amount of effort, like the amount of effort it takes to get from the bottom of where you are to the top of that building is the standard I set for any Uncharted game to have. Like, they should have at least one segment like that where it's just massive and takes you forever to get to the top. And when you get to the top, it's just amazing how great it looks. But there wasn't really any segments like that in this game, to be honest. There's not one real fantastic climbing segment.
But there was so many other fantastic bits. The bell tower. The bell tower thing
was good. Yeah, the
bell
tower.
But that is mind-boggling. And the Jeep chase section, how they have managed... You are effectively playing a cutscene.
Yeah, I suppose it is good, I can't imagine, I literally can't name another game that I've taken more pictures of than Uncharted 4 on, day one. I think I literally filled up my hard drive with just pictures of Uncharted 4, because it looked absolutely incredible. I loved every moment of my first playthrough. On my second playthrough, I started obviously nitpicking, because you always do on your second, or your third, or your fourth. It's just little things. It's not anything that particularly harms anyone's initial impressions, but it's just little things that I noticed that sort of put me off playing the game in future, or, well, not really necessarily put me off, but just I'm a bit weary of. I think for the most part the character development isn't the best that we've seen from Naughty Dog, put it that way, but it's nice to see all these characters in this, for this Uncharted game. We see a bit of Sully, you see a bit of Elena. It does sort of feel like the best of. It would have been nice to see a bit of Chloe though.
Well, she's in the DLC, isn't she?
Yeah, but it would have been nice to have her in this final Uncharted game with Nathan in.
That's true. I'm going to be interested to see her and Nadine in the DLC. That's going to be super cool.
Because they never mentioned her in Uncharted 4, not even once, I don't think.
No.
Well, that's probably because it's Nathan's ex. You don't really want to talk about why his wife's around.
That's very true.
Maybe, but you'd think Sully would mention it when he's around with Nathan or something. Or, it would...
But
she was such an...
You're given the impression that Nathan Drake gets around a bit, shall we say.
Well,
so
he
mentioning
was in the second and third game. So I would expect her to be in this game, naturally. At least have one appearance, so she just randomly turns up.
Well, alright, come on, we got to move on. We got some questions to answer.
Really?
Quickly. Yeah, just a few.
Morning.
Okay.
Alright, very quick questions. Let's go forwards to backwards. So, Indie Marathon would like to know, why isn't Hitman your game of the year? And if it is, then congratulations. We can't tell you what the game of the year is yet, because I don't actually know. Does anyone know?
I can't remember.
Because
between Oval.
that one actually went to
I
a
know.
vote, and I don't know what the results of the vote
It
were.
went to
Well, I
a
don't-
vote, but we're not going to reveal what it was between.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
There
Oh,
was-
yes.
it was
I
a vote
remember.
between two games, but I don't know what the result of
Yeah.
that vote was either, so I can't tell you if it was
Oh,
Hitman.
that'd be it.
Good thing you
Like,
said that. I was about to say what the games were.
No,
It's
don't
not.
do
It's
that.
not what people are doing.
Oh
People-
god. That's all good.
Hitman definitely.
It's not Hitman anyway.
Yes, I will say it's not Hitman, but Hitman definitely did get
We're sorry,
discussed.
but it's not.
It did get discussed over the whole of our Game of the Year discussions, though. I believe. I'm sure we
Yeah.
talked about Hitman
Yeah,
at some
we did.
point over
talk
like
about-
those 4 hours that we were talking about games. Adam Garrett would like to know, how does it feel that it's been 5 years since the TSA All Stars released the Ho 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 Have a Merry Crimbo terrible rap song?
To the
I
point that
wasn't
half the
even
people on
here
this
for this.
podcast won't even know what that is.
Yeah, most people don't know what that is. It's very bad.
I looked at the link. It
I
looked,
want links, dude.
I'll send you the link later. It's
think
very
you-
bad.
You should
it's
just
so
tack it
bad.
on. Tack it on to the end of this podcast. Chris.
Yeah, I'm probably going to use it as the outro music. It's super bad.
Yeah.
I did not do anything with this. This is archive footage.
To be fair, I don't think I'm in it. If I'm in it,
Yes,
it's
you are. You're right at the very start.
yeah, I'm in it, but unwillingly. You just sampled me.
Yeah, I have to say it is one of the best polishing a turd jobs I have ever done.
Yeah,
in my
that's very
life.
true.
I mean, the original raps were just so
They're very bad.
bad.
They're very bad.
now.
But I don't. That's why I was smart enough not to do any of the raps.
Smart move.
I still think it sounds pretty good, actually.
Mr.
Anyway.
The next big
Jimmy would like us to argue about No Man's Sky. No, not going to do that.
We generally agreed it was a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
It was rubbish.
I announced the return of regular podcasting. I'm not going to do that either. There will be more podcasts at some point. I don't know when.
Yay!
Yay.
Hey.
Let me just let me get the rest of my life together, and then we'll sort that bit out.
I mean, like,
I need to not be a complete mess, and then we can get podcasting back on the road. Then last question, because I'm not going to read Lewis's because it's Lewis. Why have
that's unfair.
What has he said?
he just wants to know about the transmogrification of black currants into Ribena. I just assume they squish the black currants.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom H. Lord would like to know, why have comparatively less people purchased Titanfall 2 versus Battlefield, COD, and probably Farming Simulator 17? Discuss. Probably right.
Titanfall, the original Titanfall, basically everyone thought they knew what was coming.
Yeah. And you also had the issue, of course, that Titanfall 1 was a exclusive. It wasn't on PS4, PS3, whatever. But
It was
it wasn't
on PlayStation.
It wasn't on Sony at all.
And it came out at a stupid time of year as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also putting Titanfall 2 up against Battlefield was just a dumb idea. Like they basically put it up against their own game.
Yeah, it's like the most weirdest thing they could have done. I couldn't believe it when they did it anyway. I was like, how can two FPSs be launched practically the same week?
They put up against
from
that,
the
and then
same
COD was
publisher.
out about the same time as well. It was just a terrible idea.
Yeah, it was Battlefield 1, Titanfall, and then COD.
Yeah, and
They should
It's a
spread
massive
it.
shame.
They should
Absolutely.
spread
it
it.
is a massive game because Titanfall 2, like we discussed, is a gem. It is quite a good.
Yeah, it's a good
that we
game. It's
enjoy.
really enjoyable. It's a big problem that they just basically sent it out to die, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right, that's it for questions. I told you it'd be brief. But yeah, thank you for your questions. There will be, I don't know what we'll do, podcast. Something will happen in the future.
We can do one.
It takes a lot of time. This will
Oh,
probably
Good
take
luck
me.
editing this.
Yeah, this is probably
That's
gonna take
all.
me. This probably takes me like 4 or 5 hours to edit this. So, it's a big time investment. Right. Anyway, thank you all for coming on. You can go and just check out stuff at TheSixthAxis.com in a minute because there's no podcast stuff to redetail. If you want to get in touch with us personally, you can get me on Twitter as HalBPro. That's HALB Pro. You can get Tough Cub at Tough Cub, which is spelled TUFF Cub. You can get Dave at Dave__Irwin. You can get Dom at Dom Layton, and you can get Jake at _ZEIKKU, or Zaiku is how I pronounce that.
Yep.
And you thought I had the stupidest Twitter handle.
No,
that's
I
offense,
do.
Jake.
I totally do.
But that's going to do it for this podcast. We hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. But for now, just say goodbye, everybody, and Happy Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho.
And the Merry Crimbo. Right, goodbye.
We're enslaved, and we're flying fast, and TSA dropping Persies on the hood. Man, we're the best in the world, and you can't beat us, so join TSA for an epic Christmas.
Yo, it's Kev reppin' TSA to this awful track. But cut me some slack, I ain't no lyricist. Get you to do what I do, you think I was a hypnotist. I get you to do what I do, you think I was a hypnotist. Eating cheese nuts by an open fire. Dreaming of Angelina Jolie, there's a lot to be desired.
Games Christmas gift, leave the world inspired.
TSA's got the Christmas shit that you require. Kissing chicks under the mistletoe. Eating my Christmas dinner all alone. Alright. Holding kids so call I'm in my zone. Yeah. In my zone.
Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah. Yo, it's Lewis, king of the Jewish, the big bad editor of Screen Demon. I make your screens filled with movie semen. Movie scene. My favorite hobby is to ridicule Kris. I like to take the piss, so don't you diss. I'm the master of quizzes. I'm making my job to know this business. Boom, epic, awesome sauce and cake. Mrs. Claus has bought me a game with Nathan Drake. So here we sit with Mr. Nathan Drake. Not the real one, he's a fake. And with the colossal bloom, who always has too much to do. And we're the best in the world, and you can't beat us, so join TSA for an epic Christmas. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah.
Hey, yeah, it's me, the P to the E to the T to the ER, the goddamn creator, what's that? Yeah, I'm having a bath, in my super sexy Santa hat, with my rubber duck radars and candle, I don't give a fuck, if there's one thing I'm not ever gonna regret, it's me in a tub, motherfucker, don't you forget, I'm a fan of Star Wars, games and booze, but let me hand it over to these chumps before you start to snooze.
Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, Santa's back, Santa's back. Ho, 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 have a Merry Christmas, coming in the beers, yeah.
Yeah.